My wife, who has been secretly married for 7 years, said she had to work overtime at the company. What was even more absurd was, at midnight, she even posted something on her WeChat moments. Those who love me and those I love are all around me. The picture attached was of a clumsy and adorable panda-shaped dumpling. Our daughter, who was by my side, looked at the picture and asked with anticipation, "Is this the surprise mommy is bringing back?" After thinking for a moment, I resolutely replied, "No! It's time for NN and me to leave." Because the next picture of the panda dumpling was a photo of my wife and herself moonlight in an intimate pose. At that moment, she was at the seaside with herself moonlight, watching fireworks together. After getting NN to sleep, I reopened that post, staring at the uncontrollable smile on the woman's face. It was then that I finally realized the difference between love and not loving is far greater than I ever imagined. However, just as I was about to get up and leave, Anne, who should have been asleep, grabbed the corner of my shirt. She looked at me with full expectation. "When I wake up tomorrow, I will definitely see you, right?" I nodded, but then I had to ask, "If Daddy wants to take you away from Mommy, would you be willing?" Anne, whose little lips had been lifted in a smile, suddenly dropped them. She looked at me cautiously. Is it because Anne was naughty that Mommy doesn't want me anymore? But I really wanted to tell Anne that her deeply loved Mommy doesn't love her. However, looking into the innocent eyes of my child, I simply couldn't bring myself to speak. But Anne is a little angel. She pursed her lips. After this new year, if Mommy still doesn't like Anne, then we won't need her anymore. I extended my pinky finger on the first day of the new year and confirmed an unofficial agreement with my less than 6-year-old child. Pinky swear, 100 years without change. Anne's little finger hooked mine. Her voice was soft, but her determination was unshakable. I forced myself to hold back the pang in my heart and smiled, saying, "Okay." Anne, the most obedient, she finally closed her eyes peacefully. Her little hand slowly released the corner of my shirt. I quietly left the room, closed the door. Leaning against the doorframe, I took a deep breath. In my mind, the memories of these years flooded back. The way my wife, Liu Ruyan, treated our child. From the moment she was born, Liu Ruyan handed the baby over to me for care. She refused to breastfeed, and she wouldn't even hold the crying child. The only thing she cared about was choosing our daughter's name. It was rare, but she actually accompanied me to the police station. Liu Ruyan said the child would take her surname, so she named her Liu Nianen. At the time, I didn't think much about it. I thought Liu Ruyan just wanted our daughter to be safe and sound for her whole life. But I had forgotten. Her white moonlight was Jibuan, 7 years of marriage. But Liu Ruyan's heart only had Jibuan, the one she truly cherished. When she finally came back, it was already the morning of the first day of the new year. Anne, who was eating, brightened up when she saw her. She quickly swallowed the bun in her mouth and rushed to her. "Mom, did you bring me a New Year gift?" Anne looked at Liu Ruyan's hands with full expectation. "What did you call me?" Liu Ruyan furrowed her brows. Her lips pressed into a straight line, showing her displeasure. Anne was startled by the woman's cold demeanor. Her eyes reddened, but she still held back the tears. "Auntie, you promised me that you'd give me a New Year gift." However, Liu Ruyan just frowned and even shot me a fierce glare. "Is this the child you raised? She only knows how to ask adults for things." She brushed past Anne, nonchalantly saying, "I forgot the gift. I'll just buy it in a few days." Anne, upon hearing this, though disappointed, still forced a reluctant smile. But I noticed there was a beautifully wrapped gift box in her bag. Liu Ruyan didn't stay at home for long. Before taking Anne and me to the old family home, Liu's parents never liked me their son-in-law who had married into the family, and they liked Annan even less. Because she was a girl, their vast family fortune couldn't be passed down to her. As soon as we entered, a delicate little boy naturally extended his hand to Liu Ruyan. "Mom, why did it take you so long to come? Both Dad and I have been waiting for you for a long time." Liu Ruyan dotingly pinched the boy's small face and took out a model from her bag. "This is the one I promised to buy you. I haven't forgotten." Annan stared at the toy with wide eyes and whispered to me, "Why doesn't Mommy buy me one? Is it because I'm not obedient enough?" I patted Annan's head just as I was about to say something. Ji Buin walked up to me. It seemed like he didn't even notice me. He smiled and wrapped his arm around Liu Ruyan's waist. "Why did you bring them along?" Liu Ruyan chuckled lightly. "After all, the child is mine. I just brought them over to see my parents." In her nonchalant explanation, Annan tightly held onto my hand. At the dinner table, the two elderly people kept praising Kiki for his good manners. They kept serving him more food. Kiki was the son that Ji Buin brought back after his divorce and returned to the country. As for Annan, their biological granddaughter, they wouldn't even give her a small red envelope. They didn't even bother to say a simple Happy New Year greeting. It was all because I was just an afterthought for Liu Ruyan, a husband she found randomly. 7 years ago, Ji Buin, while studying abroad, met his true love and broke up with Liu Ruyan, whom he had been in a 3-year relationship with. Meanwhile, I was working at a bar to earn tuition fees. When I was unexpectedly harassed, it was Liu Ruyan who helped me out. That night, she asked me if I would be willing to strike a business deal. She would pay for my tuition, with the only condition being that I marry her in name, in order to continue my studies. And with the faint feelings I had for her, I agreed. But after Liu Ruyan got drunk one night, we unexpectedly ended up having a marital relationship. Later, she unexpectedly got pregnant, but because of her physical condition, she couldn't carry the pregnancy long term. In desperation, Liu Ruyan had no choice but to carry the baby to term. My in-laws had never been particularly fond of me. But when they found out that the long-awaited grandson had turned into a granddaughter, they treated Annan and me as if we didn't exist. After dinner, I was just about to discuss divorce with Liu Ruyan when I heard Annan crying out, "Daddy." I ran quickly to the living room, only to find Annan's face covered in bloodstains. She was hanging her head, sobbing softly. When she saw me, Annan frightenedly rushed into my arms. But the instigator, Kiki, showed no sign of guilt when he saw me. Instead, he wore a smug smile. When Liu Ruyan appeared, he finally raised his voice. "Liu, Mom!" She tried to bully me. Upon hearing this, Liu Ruyan, filled with anger, directly pulled Annan from my arms. "This child who learns nothing good. Why are you acting like this?" But when she saw the bloodstains on Annan's face, Liu Ruyan froze mid-sentence. I originally thought she would defend Annan, but to my surprise, even with the glaring evidence in front of her, Liu Ruyan still took sides. Kiki, holding the model, fearlessly stood beside Liu Ruyan. He loudly yelled, "Liu, Mom!" It was her who wanted to steal my toy. I knew Annan would never snatch anything, but Liu Ruyan only believed what Kiki said. She raised her hand, taking advantage of my moment of inattention. She slapped Annan hard across the face. "Does the house lack anything for you? Is this how much you like stealing others' things?" I hugged Annan, heart aching. For the first time, I shouted at Liu Ruyan, "She's your daughter. Can't you ask a few more questions? What if it wasn't Annan's fault?" Liu Ruyan, however, only sneered coldly. She scoffed. "Are you questioning me? You're just a son-in-law, relying on me to feed and support you. What right do you have to argue with me?" Yes, ... I did, after all, willingly become a stay-at-home husband after marriage. I truly had no right to argue with her, to take care of our newborn daughter, and to allow Liu Ruyan to fully devote herself to her work. I nearly sacrificed all my personal time, trying my best to care for this small family. When Ji-boon saw this, he started pretending to apologize. Kids always fight and make noise. Which child doesn't grow up crying? His words immediately ignited Liu Ruyan's anger. Wanting to steal things at such a young age? How could she not grow up to commit worse crimes? I shouldn't have had her in the first place. Even though I tried my best to cover Ann's ears, she still heard the last sentence. Ann jumped out of my arms and spoke up first. "I'm sorry. It's all my fault." I looked at Ann in disbelief, but only saw the constant tears falling onto the floor. Liu Ruyan, however, nodded with satisfaction. "That's better. Admitting mistakes and correcting them is what makes a good child." She raised her hand, wanting to pat Ann's head, but Ann dodged. "Auntie, my dad and I are leaving first. We won't disturb your family's reunion dinner." As I held Ann's hand and left the Liu household, no one tried to stop us. The winter wind in Gyeongchang was especially biting. I held Ann in my arms, walking step by step toward the hospital. Halfway there, Ann clung to my neck, sobbing lightly. "Daddy, do you believe me? I really didn't steal his things. I just wanted him to tell me why mommy likes him. I also want mommy to kiss me, to hug me. But now I don't like
Every
mommy
word
anymore."
Ann
Ann spoke felt like a sharp knife twisting in my chest. The pain was so intense I could barely breathe. When we finally reached the hospital and wrapped up the wound, Ann stayed strong, not shedding a single tear. It was the nurse standing nearby who looked at her with compassion. She intentionally handed Ann a lollipop. Ann looked at me with a face full of resentment. To suffer like this on the first day of the new year. Why didn't her mom come along? Ann, seeing my silence, boldly answered for me. "My mom has a family outside. She doesn't like me. She likes the kids from Uncle's house." The nurse opened her mouth to speak, but then awkwardly said to me, "I'm sorry." Her eyes, gazing at Ann, were filled with growing sympathy. Even strangers who had never met Ann couldn't help but feel sorry for her. But the one person who gave her life, her own mother, had never loved her. When we got home in the evening, Liu Ruyan was already sitting on the couch. She stood up in a fluster when she saw us. Then she took a cake out of the fridge. As for the events earlier that day, I thought for a moment. Ultimately, it was Ann who was hurt. Liu Ruyan squatted down and, for the first time, took Ann's hand. "Mommy apologizes. Can you forgive me?" Ann looked at me, unsure how to react. This was the first time Liu Ruyan had called herself mom in front of her, and the first time she had actively bought Ann a cake. I couldn't bear to break this warm moment, so I gently took Ann's other hand. But when the cake was opened, the look of expectation on Ann's face visibly faded into disappointment. Liu Ruyan didn't understand. She picked up a piece of mango cake and was about to shove it into Ann's mouth. "Do you know, Ann?" Ann shook her head at me. "Daddy, I can eat it." Suddenly, my phone, which had been placed on the coffee table, vibrated. It was from Ji-boon. I instinctively glanced at it. The contact name was beloved Ann, and the profile picture was someone I had just met earlier that day. Liu Ruyan glanced at the message. Then, as if completing a task, she continued pushing cake into Ann's mouth. Even when Ann quietly said she couldn't eat anymore, Liu Ruyan persisted, doing things her way. When she finally finished feeding her the whole cake, she sighed in relief. "I have something to do. I'm leaving first." When Liu Ruyan stood up, Ann grabbed her hand. By now, Ann's face had swollen from an allergic reaction, and there were various rashes all over. But Ann only quietly said, "Mom, actually, I'm allergic to mangoes. Can you take me to the hospital?" Liu Ruyan frowned. "You know you're allergic to mangoes. Why didn't you tell me in advance? She glared at me. Is this another one of your treks? Turns out Buin was right. You two, father and daughter, always resort to lowly tricks. Take her to the hospital yourself. I have things to do. Liu Ruyan impatiently brushed Ann's hand away, took the car keys, and walked out. With the sound of the door closing, the room fell into a suffocating silence. Liu Ruyan didn't remember Ann's allergy to mangoes. She didn't see the pain on Ann's face, and it seemed like she didn't realize the extent of the harm she had caused her daughter. Annan sat on the couch, her small hand pressed against her swollen cheek, her eyes showing a maturity and resignation beyond her age. She didn't cry or make a scene, nor did she try to hold onto Liu Ruyan's hand. She calmly said to me, "Daddy, I don't want this bad mommy anymore." I nodded, forcing a smile, but tears couldn't be held back and streamed down my face. In the beginning, Liu Ruyan and I did have moments filled with warmth. She entered my life like a savior. But after weaving a beautiful dream for me, she brutally woke me up, telling me in blood-soaked words that someone like me, an orphan with no parents, was unworthy of someone like her, a moon in the sky. Back at the familiar hospital, it was still the same nurse, but this time, she didn't ask any questions. Instead, she quietly placed several pieces of candy on Ann's bedside. During the time Annan was hospitalized for her allergy, Liu Ruyan never came to visit. Instead, it was Ji Buin's WeChat moments, where her face frequently appeared. Some people, even if you miss them, will always be waiting for you when you turn back. A single message and they can immediately appear in front of you. Some people are really made to be mothers, especially Kiki's mother. I clicked on the picture. It showed Liu Ruyan gently wiping cake crumbs from Kiki's mouth, and that complete mango cake was hundreds of times more exquisite than the small mango cake she brought home. It turned out that even the only cake was just a side gift from Liu Ruyan for another child. When Annan was discharged from the hospital, Liu Ruyan, for the first time ever, called me. "When are you coming back?" I originally thought she had had a change of heart, but the next sentence extinguished all hope. "The house is a mess right now. You'd better come back and clean it up." I chuckled lightly. The Liu group is so wealthy. Can't you afford a housekeeper? Liu Ruyan was taken aback. She didn't expect me, who had always been obedient to her, to argue back. "You know, I don't like strangers. Besides, you're the one most familiar with the house." I didn't say another word. After completing Ann's hospitalization procedures, I took her and went home. The house was indeed a mess. It seemed like a party had been held there. I asked Annan to wait outside the door. Then I entered the bedroom to start packing. This house was almost completely surrounded by Ann's and my things. But even though we had lived there for almost 7 years, I still had to clear some space for the true head of the house. Before leaving, I placed the prenuptial agreement in the most visible spot in the foyer. Then, holding Annan, I left the place that no longer felt like home without a second glance. Before boarding the plane, I sent Liu Ruyan my final message. "Wish you happiness." I didn't wait for her to reply. I pulled out my SIM card and swiftly turned off my phone. Annan and I. It was time to look forward. It wasn't until the Lantern Festival that Liu Ruyan remembered that I and Annan still existed at home. Even then, she delayed returning until 10 p.m. When she saw the still messy room, her face immediately darkened. Furious, Liu Ruyan flipped open our chat history, just as she was about to send a message to question me. She finally saw the message I had sent her a week ago. But as soon as she tried to send a reply, she saw only a red exclamation mark on her screen. Liu Ruyan took a deep breath and began calling me frantically. But unfortunately, I had already changed my number. On the other end, there was always the busy mechanical voice. Seeing that the call wouldn't go through, she angrily slammed the door. As she walked into the bedroom, she finally realized that everything related to Anan and me had disappeared. At that moment, Liu Ruyan finally realized something was wrong. Panicked, she ran to the living room. Finally, she found the divorce agreement I had left behind. We were already a couple who had married by agreement, so I didn't ask for anything. The only condition for me leaving with nothing was that Anan's custody had to be given to me. Liu Ruyan's gaze lingered on the place where I had signed. In her fury, she tore it to shreds. Just then, the phone rang. Liu Ruyan quickly answered. "He Kong, why are you running around with Anan on the New Year's Day?" Before she could finish her angry questioning, Jibuin's voice came from the other end, trying to calm her down. Maybe they went on a trip, father and daughter. Today is the Lantern Festival. Kiki said she wants to eat the tangyuan you made. Liu Ruyan nodded in agreement. When she arrived at the Fu family's house with the freshly bought ingredients, the door was open, and she just happened to overhear Kiki's triumphant laughter. "Ms. Liu is such a fool. I can just say anything, and she really does what I want with her daughter." She was about to push the door open when she froze. Jibuin disapproved and knocked gently on Kiki's head. "You can't say that about Yan Yan." Liu Ruyan's expression softened, but before she could fully absorb it, she heard Jibuin continue. "After all, she will be your mother soon, and the Liu group will be ours, father and son. You need to act nice lately. Make her like you more." Kiki nodded. "I know. She's just so dumb. She believes everything I say." The two of them schemed and mocked without hesitation. Liu Ruyan suddenly pushed the door open. The smug expression on Jibuin's face instantly disappeared. He nervously asked, "Did you hear anything just now?" Liu Ruyan, enraged, threw the food she had just bought at Jibuin's body. "I heard everything. I'm telling you, I'll never divorce in this lifetime, and I will never marry you again. I won't just hand over the Liu group." After I left Jiangchang, I had no idea about the conflict and fallout between Liu Ruyan and Jibuin. At that time, I was focused on setting up a new home with Anan. Anan had said long ago that she wanted to have a little dog, but Liu Ruyan didn't like animals that shed fur, and she didn't like noisy animals either. Now that I had finally shaken off the oppressive past, I naturally wanted to give the best to the obedient Anan. Once everything was settled, it was time for Anan to start school. I had just dropped her off at kindergarten when the phone rang. After answering, it was a servant from the Liu household. Previously, her younger daughter had been bullied at school, and I had asked my old college friend to help with the matter. Because of this incident, she was the only one in the Liu family a person who showed kindness to me. "Mr. Liu, on the first day of the new year, I didn't dare to stand up and speak for you, but I recorded a video of that little boy bullying Kiki. I hesitated for so many days, but I still decided to send it to you. I hope it helps." Turns out, there are still many good people in this world. I felt a warm feeling in my heart, but I still declined. I believe my daughter would never bully anyone. Evidence isn't so important to me. But I didn't expect that Liu Ruyan would hold a grudge about me not speaking out sooner. In the end, she still handed the video to Liu Ruyan. In the footage, Anan sweetly called Brother Kiki, but the little boy ignored her entirely, even letting out a dismissive snort. Anan didn't get upset. Instead, she nervously asked, "Brother Kiki, can you tell me why mommy likes you?" Kiki stood up, suddenly pushing Anan to the ground. Without any reason, he began hitting Anan. Only when Anan cried out in pain did he answer the question, "Because your mom loves my dad. You and your poor dad aren't liked by Ms. Liu." When Liu Ruyan saw this, she angrily threw her phone to the ground. After a long pause, she collected herself and asked, "How well do you know He Kong?" Wang Ma nodded. "Mr. He has helped me before." Liu Ruyan looked thoughtful. Then she slipped a note with money into Wang Ma's hands. Here's 100,000 yuan. I need to know He Qiang's exact location within a week. After moving to Sioux City, I found a job at a law firm. Although it was just a trainee lawyer position, for someone who hadn't touched law in 7 years, it was more than enough. Since leaving Jiangshan and that suffocating home, everything had been heading in a positive direction. Ann made new friends at kindergarten, and I rediscovered my passion. But with happiness came unexpected challenges. I never expected Liu Ruyan would spend so much effort trying to find Ann and me. When we met again, she was standing in front of the kindergarten trying to take Ann. The teacher, being responsible enough, noticed Ann's fear and protected her. It had been more than half a month since then. When we met again, she was standing in front of the kindergarten trying to take Ann. The teacher, being responsible enough, noticed Ann's fear and protected her by standing in front of her. It had already been more than half a month. I've never seen you come to pick up or drop off the child. Besides, Ann said she doesn't know you. Unless the child's father comes. Liu Ruyan quickly pulled out her phone, frantically searching, trying to prove that she was Ann's mother. But after searching for a long time, she realized that after 7 years, she had never taken a single photo with us. The teacher, being observant, waved at me when she saw me. She handed Ann over to me. And only then did she relax, seeing Liu Ruyan still refusing to leave. The teacher openly complained to me. This lady insisted on taking Ann away. I tried to stop her, but it didn't work. She kept insisting she's Ann's mother. When you signed up, I specifically paid attention. Wasn't Ann's mother already deceased? When Liu Ruyan heard this, her face turned red, then pale. When did I die? He Kong, even if you hate me, you can't deny my existence. It would be better if I were dead. At least Ann could tell her classmates that her mother stayed because she loved her very much. She would have chosen to stay for her, not watch her mother love someone else's child. You wanted to be with Ji Buin, didn't you? Why are you still looking for us? When did I ever say I wanted to be with him? Liu Ruyan took a deep breath. I came to find you. Let's go home. But there was no apology, no gift. I couldn't help but laugh at her words. Liu Ruyan seemed to still live in the past, thinking I was still the He Kong who would obey everything she said. She believed that with a single word from her, I would forgive her without hesitation and please her again. But this time, she was too confident. I'm not going back. That's your home, not Ann and mine. Liu Ruyan looked at me in disbelief. How is it not your home? You haven't even signed the divorce agreement. I held Ann, taking a step back to avoid any discomfort. Then we'll wait for the 2-year separation and automatic divorce. Liu Ruyan couldn't understand my persistence. She tried to shift the conversation back to Ann. What about our daughter? Do you really want Ann to grow up in a single-parent family? What if someone makes fun of her for not having a mother? I was about to speak when Ann finally couldn't hold back anymore. I don't want you as my bad mommy. You only like Kiki. You don't love me at all. Seeing Ann becoming emotionally agitated again because of Liu Ruyan's presence, I gently patted her shoulder, feeling a pang of sorrow. I'm not going back. And Ann doesn't welcome you. Don't come and disturb us anymore. At these words, Liu Ruyan's face immediately darkened. She bit her lip, looking guilty as she said, I know I've neglected you and Ann over the years, but I haven't done anything too extreme. Can't you give me another chance? Fearing that I might refuse, Liu Ruyan quickly promised, I'll focus more on family and less on work from now on. I'll accompany you to pick up and drop off Ann. How about that? I shook my head. No need. Late love is worse than neglect. I can do all this by myself. I hugged Ann and completely ignored Liu Ruyan, who was following behind us. I had originally thought that with Liu Ruyan's prideful nature. After I said those harsh words, She would never come looking for Annan and me again. But I realized I had underestimated her determination. The next morning, she was waiting for me downstairs in the community. When she saw Annan, she quickly handed her a strawberry cake. Last time, I didn't know you were allergic to mangoes. This time, I remembered. Annan took the cake. But then, to Liu Ruyan's surprise, she handed it to a girl who was out for a morning run. Then she held my hand and said, "Daddy, take me to school." Liu Ruyan's eyes were filled with confusion, but she didn't say anything. After dropping Annan off at kindergarten, she caught up with me. "Let's talk." Talk about what? I don't think there's anything to discuss between us. I looked at her calmly. How can there be nothing to talk about? We are legally married. Annan, both legally and by blood, is my daughter. I don't want to have a permanent rift between us. And I certainly don't want to fight with you in court over Annan's custody. When the words custody were mentioned, Liu Ruyan confidently smiled. From the stability of work to the family environment, the court will definitely be more inclined to give custody of Annan to me. I clenched my fists, not revealing that I had already found a job. Fine, let's talk. As soon as we sat down, she handed me her phone. I already know about Kiki lying and Ji Buin, and I have completely cut ties. I watched the video of Annan being bullied. My fists clenched silently. So what? Is your final solution to stay away from them and not make them pay the price? Liu Ruyan shifted her gaze away. Buin, he grew up with me. I don't want to cause trouble for them. Even if I want to fix things between me and Annan, Liu Ruyan still habitually favored the other pair of father and son. Then there's nothing left for us to discuss. I didn't want to argue before, but now I can't be bothered. I stood up, not willing to talk to Liu Ruyan any longer, and walked toward the law firm. When I arrived at the office, Bai Ningbing, my fellow trainee lawyer, handed me a steaming breakfast. Boss, you probably haven't eaten yet this morning. She looked at me with a cheerful smile, her eyes sparkling with the energy of youth. Thanks. I took a sip of soy milk, and only then did my body gradually warm up. Bai Ningbing and I graduated from the same university, though she's about 5 or 6 years younger than me. There's no need for thanks. If you hadn't stepped up last time, all the important documents in my bag would have been taken. Bai Ningbing was referring to the previous divorce case, where the defendant's side had crucial evidence in my bag. To ensure the plaintiff lost, the defendant's side sent someone to steal and destroy it. I happened to finish work at that time and saw Bai Ningbing being robbed. On impulse, I rushed to help. Luckily, in the end, we won the case. Bai Ningbing also took special care of me afterward. I smiled lightly. We're colleagues. Helping each other is what we should do. But this scene, as Liu Ruyan entered the office, she mistakenly thought Bai Ningbing was my new girlfriend. She stormed in and knocked the soy milk out of my hand onto the floor. Such cheap stuff. You can still drink it? Seeing her furious expression, I instinctively stepped back and shielded Bai Ningbing. This gesture further fueled Liu Ruyan's anger. With a darkened face, she hissed, "Is this the reason you want to divorce me? I told you, you can't just live in a comfortable life. You insist on making things difficult for me." Liu Ruyan sneered at me, a mocking smile curving her lips. It was like I was seeing a completely different woman for the first time. After taking a deep breath, I said word by word, "Liu Ruyan, not everyone is like you." Looking at the bowl while eating from the pot. Don't try to impose your ways on me. She was so angered by my words that her face turned red. And being in a strange place, no one was willing to speak on her behalf. Liu Ruyan's eyes slowly filled with tears. He calmed. "You've changed. You used to never raise your voice at me. You promised me ... You would be good to me rest of your life." Seeing that she couldn't argue with me, Liu Ruyan started to bring up the past. But what she was owed, I had long since paid back. Have you forgotten? This marriage was always a transaction. Now, I don't want to play house with you anymore. And please, don't come and disturb my life again. Liu Ruyan bit her lip. Her dark eyes stared at me. After a long time, she looked at me desperately. So you don't want me anymore, right? I shook my head. At the moment when hope seemed to rise in her eyes, I denied it again. It was you who didn't want Annan and me first. As soon as I finished speaking, Liu Ruyan's tears began to fall uncontrollably. But I've apologized to you. I know I was wrong. Can't you forgive me? She swallowed hard as she tried to explain. Nothing happened between me and Ji Buin. None of that matters anymore. I gave her a relieved smile and handed her the divorce agreement I had already prepared. I just hope that the next time we meet, it's at the Civil Affairs Bureau. Since that day, Liu Ruyan disappeared completely from NNS and my life. Until one day, Wangmao sent me a message about Liu Ruyan getting married. She asked if I wanted to come back. Looking at the message with someone calling me sir, I couldn't help but laugh. Liu Ruyan hadn't given up. She had used Wang Ma's phone to send me all this nonsense. I knew she was trying to make me return to her by getting remarried. But just like I told her before, I no longer loved her. No matter how many times she remarried, I wouldn't go back to her. I couldn't be bothered to play these petty games with Liu Ruyan anymore. So I blocked Wang Ma as well. The reason she was able to find my whereabouts so quickly was only because she had contacted Wang Ma. I really couldn't think of anyone else who could have done it. The news about the female CEO of Liu Group getting married spread quickly and became known to everyone. Even in the small town I was living in, people were talking about it. The news quickly spread and became known to everyone. Even in the small town I lived in, people were talking about it. When I went to pick up Annan again, her teacher, holding a phone, curiously asked me, "Was the woman who came to pick up Annan last time really Annan's biological mother?" When I nodded, the teacher's face was filled with gossip. So Annan's mother is really the CEO of Liu Group? I smiled helplessly. Yes, but we've already divorced. I hope you won't bring up these unimportant things in front of Annan in the future. Upon hearing this, the teacher awkwardly smiled and quickly nodded. But Annan knew about this matter earlier than I expected. And surprisingly, she was very calm. She seemed to not care at all about Liu Ruyan remarrying. Holding my hand, she said in a soft, childish voice, "As long as I have daddy, that's enough." I rubbed her head. But in my heart, I silently swore to work even harder to earn money and spoil her into a carefree little princess. Life at the law firm was fulfilling, especially after the new year as more and more cases came in. Even I, a newly appointed lawyer, was assigned quite a few cases. The next time I came across a piece of news about Liu Ruyan, it was on the day of her remarriage. Her grand wedding, which was live-streamed globally, was a far cry from our simple registry without a banquet. This time, her wedding was clearly of immense importance to Liu Ruyan. A reporter asked her, "Why choose to marry this year at the age of 30? Wearing a wedding dress, she clarified, "Actually, I registered my marriage at the age of 23. Was it with Mr. Ji Buin? Is this wedding going to be a formal one with him?" Liu Ruyan shook her head. "Ji Buin will not appear at the wedding. I just want to use this wedding to apologize to someone." Liu Ruyan looked at the camera. I don't know if it was my imagination, but it seemed like she was looking through the live camera, hoping for my appearance. After scanning the surroundings, Liu Ruyan let out a bitter smile and said, "Actually, I once had a husband who loved me very much and a very obedient daughter. But because of my carelessness, I lost them both. This wedding is for my lover. I hope he can see this live broadcast." Suddenly, the doors of the church were pushed open. Ji Buin, dressed in a suit, walked in, holding Kiki's hand. It seemed like he didn't know this was a live broadcast. They walked up the red carpet and stood face to face with Liu Ruyan. Good thing I came. Otherwise, the groom of this wedding would have been absent. The reporters assumed he was the leading man Liu Ruyan had mentioned. When they saw Kiki, they couldn't help but ask, "Didn't you just say you had an adorable daughter? Why is the child you brought a boy? Could it be, Liu CEO, that you have a pair of adorable twins?" Liu Ruyan frowned. "They are not the ones I was waiting for." She waved her hand, and the well-trained security was ready to escort the two uninvited guests out. But Ji-boon had already noticed the reporters. He, who cared so much about his reputation, couldn't bear to be the subject of ridicule. He loudly declared that he was the person Liu Ruyan loved. This scene quickly made its way to the trending searches, especially Liu Ruyan's words, which made many people start searching for who her husband and daughter were. Others mocked Ji-boon for being a mere third wheel, until he posted a somewhat awkward photo of himself and Liu Ruyan. The netizens began to pity him. The former lover who had been replaced by someone else. They blamed me for ruining someone else's relationship. Just as I was about to seek help from the media to clarify things, Liu Ruyan posted a clarification using the company's account. She clearly laid out the timeline and evidence, saying that our marriage occurred in the 3rd month after she officially broke up with I was never the so-called third party. With solid evidence, she shifted the focus back to Ji-boon, including the already near-bankrupt Ji family business, which suffered the wrath of netizens as well. Within half a year, the Ji company, which had been barely surviving, declared bankruptcy. Ji-boon and Kiki were thrown out of their luxurious mansion. The father and son, who had returned to the country in glory, had completely turned into lost souls. They went to Liu Ruyan, hoping she would lend them money to get through the tough times. Liu Ruyan refused. She took out the video. "We need to settle the accounts between us." Kiki nervously hid behind Ji-boon. When Liu Ruyan said the older child could earn 10,000 yuan with a slap, Ji-boon didn't hesitate for a moment. Kiki cried, begging her dad to spare him. But Ji-boon, already driven mad by his fallen state, had no mercy. He originally wanted custody of Kiki, thinking the Liu family couldn't produce a son. He then thought of the idea of marrying into the Liu family to seize the Liu family's wealth. But who knew things would get exposed so quickly? And Liu Ruyan wasn't fooled at all. When Kiki was beaten to the point of being bruised and swollen, only then did Liu Ruyan shout, "Stop!" Ji-boon looked at her with anticipation. "I just counted 500 slaps in total. Give me 5 million. Liu Ruyan smiled lightly. "I was just saying that one slap is worth 10,000. Now that I've thought it through, people like you are worthless." In the end, the father and son got nothing. They were thrown out by Liu Ruyan. At this point, Liu Ruyan looked at me nervously. "Kiki has been punished. Now, can you still forgive me? I will try to be a good mother and a good wife." I couldn't forgive Liu Ruyan, but I didn't know what Annan really thought. So I handed the decision to Annan. Half an hour later, Liu Ruyan walked out of Annan's room, her eyes red. She forced a smile, one more painful than crying. "You were right. Next time we meet, we really need to go to the Civil Affairs Bureau." When I finally got the divorce certificate after almost a year of waiting, the stone that had been weighing on my heart finally fell. Liu Ruyan didn't say a word. But when she left, she handed me a card. "I know you won't accept it, but this is a gift for Annan." I deposited the money from the card into the bank, planning to give it to Annan when she became an adult. When I heard news of Liu Ruyan again, I didn't expect it to be a final goodbye. Ji-boon blamed all his misfortune and downfall on Liu Ruyan, especially after Kiki started to become depressed. After he personally slapped her, she became afraid of the sunlight. She was diagnosed with a mental illness by a doctor. Ji-boon wanted to treat his son's illness, but couldn't come up with a single penny. In his frustration, he decided to crash his car into Liu Ruyan. Liu Ruyan was lucky to survive, but the car accident left her paralyzed on one side. She would never be able to stand again. Ji-boon was imprisoned for attempted murder. Kiki, with no one to care for her, was sent to an orphanage. I turned off my phone screen and brought the last dish out from the kitchen. Outside, the sound of firecrackers rang. It was the start of a new year. At home, there was me and Ann and a little dog.